Hey, I'm Summer.
And I'm Mike.
And we got married.
With children.
We're married 2 years now.
Blended for 11.
Like a margarita.
Yeah, baby, like a margarita.
And you're listening to the Everything Always podcast.
Want to tell them why we do this?
We do this because blending families isn't easy. There's step-parenting, co-parenting, his ex,
Her ex.
schedules, sibling rivalry,
Money issues.
custody issues.
Dating and relationship issues.
It's a whole lot of stuff.
Blended with a whole lot of good stuff.
And we're here to talk about all of it because we've done most of it.
We might not be experts, but we've learned a lot.
And we're still learning, and we want to share that with you.
Thanks for joining. Now let's go.
So today is going to be an awesome interview. Mike and I are sitting down and talking to a friend of ours who we met a year ago doing a house build. And we'll talk all about that in the interview. He's a dad, and he has this amazing co-parenting relationship that took some challenges to get there, but the advice that he gives is so great. And the situation that he's in is so inspiring. There's just so many brilliant takeaways, not only just for co-parenting, but we talk a good portion about life appreciation and like the things that you can do to have your kids experience gratitude and see what that ripple effect can be for other people and the world. I did all the talking, but my husband's sitting here right next to me. Are you ready to do this interview?
Let's dive into it.
Well, we did it already. So this is just the intro, but I'm telling you, you're going to love it. So listen to the whole thing. All right. We are sitting here with Mike Sherbakov, who Mike and I got to meet. It's actually about a year ago. And we took the kids and we did a house build with Mike, and that was a tremendous experience.
Well, we should talk a little bit about that. So,
first let's welcome Mike.
Okay. Hi, Mike. Welcome to the Everything Always podcast.
We're so excited. I talked a little bit about Mike in the intro, but we're so excited to have you here. And yeah, do you want to give a little? I'll let my Mike here give a little background of how we met and what we did, and then we'll.
So I'm trying to remember. I think Summer, I don't know how you actually heard about the...
It was a mutual friend, Brad, that I had interviewed on my other podcast.
That's how, okay.
And
that's
he
how
was like, you guys should do this with the kids. And he's like, hurry up because it goes quickly.
Sells out super fast.
Yeah.
And so, okay, basically Summer was like, listen, we always do like a birthday something, or we go to Palm Desert, or we do these things for my birthday. This year as a family, I want to go to Mexico and do a house build. She's like, that's what I want for my birthday. And I'm like, are you sure? That sounds like a lot of work. There's going to be like, 5-star accommodations. But it turned out to be one of the most memorable trips that we've done as a family. And the kids actually are saying like, hey, we want to go do it again, which is not usually what happens. Usually they're like, is this hotel all inclusive? Like, are we on the water?
It was an incredible experience for all of us.
And Mike, how long have you been doing the house builds?
We've actually been doing them for 6.5 years now, which is crazy how fast that's passed. And it's awesome really to hear that was not only your experience, but the experience for the kids. I think that's such an important part of what we're probably going to talk about today as well. Holden, my son, has been coming on these house builds down in Mexico the entire time. He hasn't missed a single build over the course of the 6.5 years.
With the Greatness Foundation, how many house builds a year do you do?
On average, we're doing them quarterly, so every 3 months, and each time we're building about 2 homes. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 1. What I think is actually a really impressive number is not just the amount of times that we're going down, but the amount of builds that have happened because of other people who have come down. So there's kind of the direct impact being created when we go on trips, but then there's kind of the indirect, which is someone that comes on a trip, is inspired, and then decides to either do their own build or their own project. And that's really the goal, is to, empower people to leave experiences that are really memorable, where they want to come back and give back in some way. And so what's really cool is in 6.5 years, that community is totally transformed. And just for context, for someone that's listening, The families there are living on dirt. When I say dirt, I mean, you got to experience it firsthand. It's actual dirt. When it rains, the water's running through the middle of their home. In the cold of the winter, I mean, they're freezing. In the heat of the summer, they're melting inside, these hot boxes, which are, their homes built with tarps and sticks. Pallets, exactly. So, I mean, this makes a huge difference. It's amazing what we can do in such a short amount of time. I mean, 2.5 days to go down and completely change not just the family's lives, but, the surrounding community. So grateful to have you have been a part of it. And I'm excited to do it again.
And I guess since we're talking about it, what's the website where if people wanted to go check it out, they could go and learn a little bit more about how the program works?
Yeah, they can Google Greatness Foundation and find it, or Greatness Collective really is the larger umbrella that houses everything, to include the foundation and all the kind of additional work that we do with masterminds and business programs.
For us, what was amazing is how the kids, how they bonded, what the things that they said, because we had that wonderful meeting where everybody in the house, we're all staying in this big house, we come together and everyone goes around the room, including the kids, and talks about why they're doing this, what's important to them, what's a wish that they have for the world. It was such an awesome experience. And we talk about it all the time, and they're always like, we want to do it again. I'll tell you the hard thing for us, because we want the 6 of us to do it, is that the kids have all these different things going on all the time. So it was like, and then by the time we're like, these dates will work, you guys are booked, like it fills up so quickly that I'm like, guys, we couldn't get in for those dates. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, it's definitely, it's a really good problem to have. When I first started bringing people down, it was like pulling teeth. Yeah, I thought everyone would jump on it. And, people, one thing I've learned is I have to develop thick skin, and I have to get really okay with people who are saying they're going to do it and not actually do it. So I had so many people say, yes, 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 me, next time. And when it came to actually signing up and making it happen, it is a commitment. And it was really challenging to not only do the fundraising, but, getting people on at first. And now what's really cool, and I think this speaks to the community. I can't say enough how grateful I am for our community, but it's the fact that we're sold out almost a year in advance. I mean, for the rest of the year, we're full. And each time, the last build that we put up the webpage, and 36 hours later, we had raised almost $15,000 and filled up the entire build with volunteers. So, I mean, it in 36 hours sold out, which is, again, a testament to our community. I think it's so cool. And to your point with, the conversation we have with the kids, you remember the question that I always like to ask everyone is, what is their starfish? And by starfish, it's kind of, what are you passionate about? That's something Holden, my son, and I, we talk about often. And when it comes to raising kids, I think it's such an important question to ask. The earlier, the better, because even if they don't have the answer right away, what it ends up doing, I think, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, is it kind of plants the seed, right? Whether they're aware of it, they kind of think about it in the back of their mind of, yeah, well, what am I passionate about? Or what's my starfish? What am I here to do in this lifetime? And they may not really understand it, depending on what age and, their cognitive development level, but it's definitely something that's there. It's there at the back of their mind. And when you have an experience like the one in Mexico, and you see people who are so much less fortunate, it really changes things. It changes your perspective.
Will you tell the story of the starfish? Because I'd love for listeners to hear this and to tell the story to their children and then pose the same question.
Yeah. So the story goes like this. One morning, an older man is walking down a beach, and he looks down away and sees what looks like a silhouette dancing. And as he is getting closer and closer, he realizes that it's not anyone dancing. It's actually this little boy. And what the boy's doing is he's picking up starfish off of the beach, and he's throwing them in the ocean. And so the old man kind of asks him, son, what are you doing? And it's the older man is he's lived a rough life. He's a little cynical, a little grumpy. So he asks the boy what he's doing, and the boy is continuing to pick up these starfish and throw them in the ocean. And he says, what do you mean? You can't see what's happening? Because the tide's going out right now. The sun is in the middle of the sky. And if I don't pick up these starfish and throw them into the ocean, they're all going to die. They're just going to burn up on this beach and die. And the old man looks, to the left, looks to the right, and he says, boy, there's miles and miles of beach this way, miles of beach that way. There must be thousands, if not tens of thousands of starfish. And he tells the boy, you can't possibly make a difference. And the little boy doesn't even say a word, just picks up a starfish, throws it in, and says, it made a difference to that one. And I love telling that story because I've traveled to many parts of the world where people are living in very challenging conditions. And it's very easy to just come back to, well, there's just way too much. I can't possibly make a difference. Right. Or we feel like there's so many challenges our world is facing, social, environmental, economical. I mean, all of these. And we say, well, we can't possibly do anything. And yet, just like that little boy is picking up one at a time, there is absolutely a starfish that each one of us could pick up one at a time and do something about, just like you and your family joined us for the house build. That was in that weekend, that starfish was that family. And then, during the week when we're back at home, maybe that starfish is our children. Maybe it's our friend that's going through a challenging time. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's someone, that we pass by every day on the street. So there's always an opportunity to pick up a starfish, to help someone that we're capable of helping. And the question is, are we actually going to be the old man that says, we can't make a difference, or are we going to be that boy that's picking one up and throwing it in?
I love that story, by the way. It's important for me because I think about it from the perspective that it's like if every person did just a little bit, there'd be a lot more starfish saved. There'd be a lot more people that were impacted. The real takeaways and messages there is that, hey, it might just be a little difference that you make as an individual, but as a group, as a community, as a larger number, the change and the difference can be significant.
And it becomes contagious. It's like it's that whole reciprocity and that whole pay it forward. You change the energy of somebody else, and now they're going to do bigger and better things.
That's exactly right. I had such a proud dad moment. I don't know if I've shared this with you. A few years ago, I was kind of having a funky day, just not, a day that was less than awesome. And I remember coming home and I had a very clear choice. I could have kind of sat in that and, said, today's just not a great day. I know how great I feel when I'm in service or when I'm giving. And so Holden had just finished school. So I picked him up from school and said, hey, let's go to the coffee shop. So in Solana Beach, this area where we live, I went to the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. Holden and I went up to the front, bought a gift certificate, and just said, can you run this gift card and pay for anyone that comes in just until it runs out? And typically, I would just leave, and that would feel awesome, just, making someone's day. But what we did on this day is we sat in the back of the coffee shop and we actually watched. We were pretending to read a book. It was really funny. So every time someone would come up, we'd kind of put our heads back in the book so they wouldn't see us. It was amazing what happened, to your point, Summer, as soon as the first person, realized that, so the person at the register tells them, hey, your coffee was paid for. You could see them start to look around like, oh my gosh, who did that? And then guess what they did? They passed it on.
Just happened to me at yes.
She was all stoked. She's like, you won't believe it. I was going through the drive-thru at Starbucks today. And I get to the window to pay, and the guy was like, the
lady in front of you just paid for you. And I'm like,
oh my gosh. Okay.
And I said, well, then I'm paying for the person behind me, and literally the energy of my whole day, I was so happy. I was in this the best mood because I'm like, that was awesome.
When I work with businesses, a lot of times I'll come in a corporate setting and I'll share that story with my son. Someone will tell me like, yeah, I had a coffee paid for me just like you did. And what I think is so cool is who knows if the ripples from years ago are still traveling because someone had an experience like that. And exactly like you said, in that line, they just kept going and going and going. And at some point it ends, and that's fine. But then the way that it impacts their day when they go home. But here's the most exciting part, because I was telling you that this is a really proud dad moment for me.
Yes.
The next year, it's Holden's, or a couple months later or something, it's Holden's birthday. And I tell him, we live in San Diego. We can do whatever you want. Where do you want to go? Do we want to take a trip? Do we want to go, go-kart racing? Do you want to laser tag? What do you want to do? It's your birthday. It's your special day. Anything that you want to do. Do you know what he said he wanted to do?
What?
Starbucks gift card.
He wanted to go to that same coffee shop and do the gift certificate. And that's exactly what we did. And for me, I'm getting goosebumps sharing that, because for me, I was like, okay, my goal wasn't to, imprint that in him, but obviously it was this impactful enough experience where that's who he's become.
Yes.
So that's super exciting to me, because think about, your kids and coming on the build, like the kind of people that they're going to become by watching us be in service, by watching us think about other people and discover what our passions are. I mean, that's ultimately what it's all about, is if we can create these ripples that travel further than we can imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you know what? It's hard to instill a mentality of giving and charity and wanting to do things to give back. I mean, that's a tough skill to try to teach, but it's a super important one, because the happiness and joy that comes from like knowing how to do that and having that, like that skill to be able to know the importance of that is really, really important.
Yeah. And I always find, it's this fine line, because as parents, I don't want to speak for all parents, but I think most of us will say, we're trying to provide the best possible experience for our children. I mean, we work hard at our careers in order to provide them, with the best possible kind of childhood upbringing that we can. And with that comes, we live in San Diego, and Holden and I, we live on the beach, and he lives a very blessed life. Certainly, almost a childhood that I wish I had growing up. And so that's why it's so important for me to have experiences outside of this, because again, it's not his fault. In my doing my best to provide him with all the best experiences, if he was just to stay in San Diego, it's kind of this bubble here, and you don't know what's really, what the rest of the world is like, or what giving and service is if you don't step outside of this. And that's why it's so important. That's why we do so much of this travel and as much impact work as we can, because yeah, I mean, I'd even love to hear your thoughts on it, providing them, with amazing experiences and the fun boat rides and, all these amazing trips to resorts and things, at the same time, making them, acutely aware of how other people in different parts of the world are living, and what reality is like on a daily basis for people that are in really challenging conditions.
Definitely will teach appreciation. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you have to make the effort to involve them in the experiences, like the house build or other things, like when it's time for the holidays. Okay, let's pick a family that we're going to help, or
love that.
It's watching documentaries. It's like, we want to share this with you because this is real stuff that's going on in the world. And sometimes they'll hear it from other friends, like, wow, you guys get to do this. And they'll say to us, like, our friends, said that they couldn't believe how lucky we were that we got to go on this vacation. And I'm like, it's true, and what had a really, really big impact, and especially I noticed with Chloe on the house build, was playing with the other children at the orphanage. And that was just like connecting with them, and then realizing, and then when she had to leave, this, thought like, is she going to be okay? Is this little girl that I've bonded with going to be okay? And it was just amazing to, she'll still think about her. And it's just, when I think what's so important is connecting with other people that are, yes, of course, in your own community, but then also doing what you do, going off into these other places and realizing that life is not just like it is in this bubble of San Diego.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes, even just seeing it is cool to watch documentaries and things like that, but it's still far away. It's still on TV. It's really just putting yourself there and seeing it in your face. Like,
Sure.
Wow, do you realize how much you have?
Not to jump off of that, but I think this is maybe a good time for a transition to talk a little bit about what this podcast is all about, which is blended families and all of those things. And this might be a good opportunity, Mike, to learn a little bit more about your dynamic with Holden, and tell us a little bit more about your parenting style, how your dynamic is set up. What's your
Co-parenting with his mom, and what's your current situation? How did you get here?
Well, I appreciate you asking. It's painted with the general feeling of just overwhelming gratitude is what it comes down to. I just feel so grateful to be raising an incredible young man. I feel grateful to be co-parenting with Holly, his mom. There were definitely times in our relationship where I was questioning why it was all happening, and I didn't really believe in that, everything happens for a reason thing. And yet I look back on everything that happened and unfolded the way that it did. And there actually isn't anything I would change. That probably sounds crazy to some people who are going, wait, you're co-parenting, you're not with his mom. But no, there actually is not a single thing I would change. And so the quick timeline of it is Holly and I met when we were 18, just young and in love. And we had Holden at 20. And it was interesting because we actually knew that I think we both intuitively knew that we weren't going to stay together. And yet, because of, we're going to make it work for our son, because of, I think, family pressures, because of kind of societal pressures, and wanting to, see if we can make it work. I would say, I call it playing house. We kind of played house for another 2 years.
Yeah.
So we had Holden, and then up until he was 2. So we were both, 22, where we just really realized this romantically is not working. We're different people than we were at 18. At 18, we were perfect for each other. And then at, 21, 22, we just realized we're very different. And so I always say it was kind of the hardest, but the best decision that I ever made was for us to transition out of this romantic partnership and really start to develop a friendship. And of course, it was not easy. There was a ton of ego involved on my end, on her end, but no one was right or wrong. It was just a lot of emotions, really, really challenging for kind of the first 6 months. And after that, we really came together around this idea. We want to raise Holden together. We want to co-parent the best that we can. Just because it didn't work out romantically doesn't mean that we can't develop a really deep friendship. And so year over year, it's been 12 years now that we've been separated. Our relationship and our friendship has only grown deeper. Fast forward to today, we're both 34 years old, and we co-parent. I need to write a book about it at some point, because we do dinners together. We just had breakfast a couple of days ago together. We do dinners together. We do family movies. We often do the holidays together. She's still very much considered part of my family. I go and see her family in Texas. She comes up, and she's very close to my parents and my family. We have a group, a WhatsApp group with our family, and she's part of that. It just works. And we haven't actually had a single argument in 12 years. We don't argue at all. We communicate super clearly. So there's no gaps between, rules in one household versus the other. And Holden and I did just move about a month and a half ago, but up until then, we were living across the street from each other. I could actually I could go on my balcony and wave to her and see her house. So we just live close together. If I go on a trip, it works really well when I come back, and she can take him. We've just been able to manage, and it flows really smoothly at this point. We're just really there to support each other. So that's kind of a snapshot of where we are today.
You have like the unicorn of co-parenting.
And amazing. What's so amazing is, like, for Holden is getting to have that secure feeling of, as that feeling of when your parents are together, because it's like you're on the same team. You have the same goals for him. It's just incredible. And, for a lot of people that doesn't happen, that's not happening because I think there might be, it sounds like there wasn't a whole ton of hurt that was involved at the beginning. It was more kind of like, we're kind of drifting into, we're going to be better as friends.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to our podcast.
Yes, we appreciate you so much, and we hope you know that we support you in whatever stage you're at.
We took a leap here, sharing our mistakes and wins with you.
Yeah, we're getting pretty vulnerable here, but we know that we've learned from those who have been brave enough to share with us, and we want to do that with you.
Hey, can you do us a favor? If you like what you hear, will you press pause and rate the podcast and write a review?
Oh, and while you're at it, share it, please.
And if you have questions, you can find us on all of our social channels.
Okay, ready to get back to it?
Let's do it.
I want to make sure that I'm not painting, the wrong picture. The first part of us separating was really, it was emotional. It was, not talking for a while. It was just saying things that weren't nice to each other. It was, she actually went to Texas for a year because that's where her family was, and deciding whether Holden was going to be here in Texas.
Oh, right. Wow. That's hard.
Yeah. We're talking, really challenging decisions that we needed to make. And again, it kind of the way that I saw it, because there's this kind of emotional side, there's this logical side, trying to figure out, okay, how do I navigate all this? And what I knew for sure when we were choosing to separate is, children, they can feel energy. They can feel if there's tension in a household. And so a part of me, to be honest, when we were separating, felt like a failure. felt like a failure to him. I didn't want to be a failure to him because the model I knew, my parents are still together. I didn't really know anyone didn't know many people that were divorced growing up. And I thought that if someone got divorced, that meant they were a failure at not only their relationship, but being a parent for their children. And yet I had to just get over that. That was a story I was telling myself. And what I realized is he's so much happy, if he sees two healthy, happy parents on their own, that is so much better than seeing parents that are trying to force something, or they just, they feel tension in a household. So, I will say the timing we were very blessed with, because since we separated when Holden was 2, all he's ever known, he's 14 now, all he's ever known is parents that are separated, co-parenting, and friends. Like, we only talk highly of one another because there's no reason to, there's no ill feelings on either party.
Well, he didn't have to change his whole dynamic. He didn't have to relearn a new scenario.
Right. And I do imagine that's got to be challenging. That's got to be really hard to do is with kids that are older.
Yeah, it's hard. It is definitely harder when they're older. Have there been other people introduced to Holden, like, girlfriends, boyfriends?
Yeah. So Holly dated someone for 3 years and he was awesome. I mean, like we all hung out. I'd give him a hug every time I see him. Like, the way I describe it is she's like a sister to me at this point. And, with like a sister or sibling, you want them to find that person that they're going to be really happy with. I mean, unfortunately that didn't work. I thought he was an awesome guy. She just kind of, I'd say, started to grow in a way that he wasn't really willing to. And I've actually tried to set her up with some of my friends too, who I think are just awesome guys who, I think would be great in a partnership with her. So outside of that, there hasn't been anyone serious for me. So I think that will, I don't know if that's going to be challenging. I can't say. I feel like, given our communication styles and the fact that we kind of talk everything through, I don't see it really as a challenge. I think the biggest adjustment will probably be actually for the partner, for instance, whoever I end up with, to be completely okay, to understand that my son's mother is such an integral part of my life, right? And she's still family to this point. And I can see, like, if someone's not really confident in who they are, that can probably be somewhat, intimidating, or it can feel like, wait, you're friends with your son's mom? Yeah, we're like best friends.
We've talked a lot about boundaries, how to have communication on certain topics that are kind of hard to have when you're starting to blend a new family. Yeah. And I could see that, I could see that being a challenge, although maybe not. It seems like a lot of time has gone by. She's not coming over and you guys are cuddling on the couch and you're all watching movies like you're a family. Places, that probably could be okay. And
I think the key thing too, like you said, there hasn't been an argument in all of these years. And I think the boundaries are important when there is that hot and cold, like, we're getting along, now we're fighting, we're getting along. For the new partner, that's hard, because it's like, oh gosh, now I'm kind of feeling like mixed in with the drama. You know what I mean? To have established this and to have gone through those 6 months of the challenge, which, like you said, even if it's we know we shouldn't be together, it's hard no matter what. And there's definitely ego in there. I mean, it just happens. And it's really about how do you work through that? And Holden is so blessed to have been so young while you guys worked that out. And for you as a young dad, to have that moment of, hey, this needs to be a good experience for my child. And that's what we talk about so much. It's about, really stepping away from the ego and how you feel. And not that you should pay attention to how you feel, but really recognizing, like, what's that experience doing for your kids, and how can you provide the most amazing experience so that they feel secure in their situation? Because the biggest thing is when, there's parents not getting along, or there's new partners coming in, and it might kind of shift the dynamic of the parents. It makes them feel insecure, like, oh, and you want them to have that feeling of, my parents have my back no matter what. They're on the same team and they love me. Like, that's the ultimate experience for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I do want to bring up, a challenge we've had recently, because, again, I don't ever want to paint the picture of it's just sunshine and rainbows all the time. I'm so grateful. And, there's things that we're working through. So the biggest one, and this has kind of been a theme for about 10 years, Holly in general, Holden's mom is really, she's playful, and she's not as much of a, create rules person. I, on the other hand, because my parents were super strict, so I thought, when I'm a dad, I'm going to let my kids do whatever they want to do. And yet I found myself, just my default is actually, he has all the freedom in the world as long as he's within these boundaries. I call it the R&R, kind of, as long as he's respectful and responsible. What ends up happening, and this is still something we've almost, figured out, but it's still a challenge, is he knows he can get away with more when he's with her. That's just, their dynamic, because she's not, as strict, not as on top of it. She's not maybe as catching the little things that I know. And I always tell him, I say, Holden, that I was a little boy once, right? Like everything he tries to get away with, I'm probably 3 steps ahead of him. And I say that, and he's probably still he's probably doing something that I don't know about. But I feel like most things, I'm kind of on top of. The challenge has been when he's with her, especially if it's for, an extended period of time, if I'm traveling for a week or something, she'll notice that he starts to push the boundaries a little bit, where when he's with me, that doesn't happen. He kind of, he knows, okay, these are the boundaries and respect them. So, we're working through that. And what's really helped is crystal clear communication, like CCC. My friend Melissa Ambrosini is the one that kind of taught me that term, and I love it. And what that means is, Holly, if there's something going on, Holly will call me, right away, and we'll be on FaceTime, talk through, hey, I feel like Holden's starting to push the boundaries a little bit here. So I'm trying to find really good ways to not have there be a gap between households, right? Like the exact same rules, that nothing changes. You shouldn't be acting like a different person because you're at one house versus another.
Yep.
And that's something that like I said, we're probably 90% of the way there, but and it's normal for kids. I get it. He's a 14-year-old teenager, and he's gonna push some boundaries, but yeah, that's what we're working through right now. I have a lot of friends that are also, doing the co-parenting or fresh out of, transitioning in their relationships. And I don't know what advice to give them outside of just communicate the best you can. But, they don't communicate with their ex-partner. And when it's their turn, and there's splitting time with the kids, when it's their turn, they notice that the kids' behavior is changed significantly, right? Maybe one parent is totally giving them whatever they want and, maybe buying things for their affection or something. And then they come back to the other parent, and there's there's more rules there, or so much respect for anyone navigating that, because that feels so challenging to me. Is how do you have that conversation with kids? Because, their experience is, I get away with these things with one parent, and it's got to be tough. They almost have to be 2 different personalities with around 2 different, households. And then that must be tough for the child too.
We've always said, the advice that we've said is, if you can't have that communication, or if it's just like, we'll always say that when somebody asks us, well, have you talked to the other parent? Have you guys talked about, well, I can't talk to him. He won't listen, or just shuts me down, or whatever. And then it's just, I kind of always say, then the only thing you can control is what's happening in your household. And you can with that and tell the kids, you are learning 2 different things. And you have this gift. When you're an adult, you have the gift of these 2 different experiences, and you then get to choose what's right for you.
And it's one of those things, we talk a lot about ego, and it's unfortunate that, the adults in the situation oftentimes don't act like adults. They let their ego get in the way. They let those other things become more important than the actual well-being of their children or child. And if people could just remember that it's like, what, for the good of this little thing that I'm trying to bring up in the world, I'm going to put my feelings, my anger, my ego, all that stuff secondary, and I'm going to put my kid first.
Mm-hmm. And remember, what is the outcome that you're looking for? And I think that's something important to always think about is, the main objective here is to guide and raise this human as best that you can.
That's so spot on. It's bringing me back to that transition that when Holly and I were separating.
Yeah.
I remember me thinking, what do I want? And then us having the conversation of what do we really want? Mm-hmm. And I think, asking that, we don't want to argue. We don't want to be bitter with anyone else. I think most people would agree on is, we want a healthy relationship. What we want is, even if it doesn't work out with parents, we want to be able to raise our kids in an environment that's, fostering growth and challenge and all of this. Like you said, Mike, to be able to put the ego aside, I think that a really important question that two people can sit down with is, what do we want? And it doesn't matter what was, it doesn't matter, what emotions were involved or anything. It's like, what's the picture of the future that we want to paint? And I would argue that, having a future with really great communication and co-parenting and ego aside is going to be a significantly better option than one with, bitterness and resentment and anger and yelling and all of that. I mean, I hope no one actually wants that, when they're thinking, when they're imagining their ideal reality, they're not thinking, I want someone that I can yell at every day. Like that's
in a sane and rational mind. That is true, but I feel like some people get so out of control.
Well, what I think it is though, and we've talked about this on past episodes and some of our earlier episodes, it's really just that, like, they're holding on to frustration, and it's really just, I need to transfer this energy. It's an immediate, temporary feel good or release of energy to do that, to yell at somebody, to get all upset and cause commotion. But we also talked about in one of the first few episodes is really looking at, well, ideally, what would this look like? Because like you said, ideally, you're not going, well, in the perfect picture, I yell at my ex every day, send nasty text messages. I get a stomach ache when I get messages from them. You're never thinking that. You're when you're really writing out, and like having this vision, it's like, well, we get along and it's easy and there's not conflict and the kids feel safe. And, you're thinking of all those things. And then if you then start to reverse engineer and start thinking about your actions and just take a pause before, you go and send a text message or respond to something that a challenge that your, ex brought to you, and think about the next thing that you're going to do or say, does that actually move you in the direction towards that vision that you had? And it makes it so much easier to go no, or even just put yourself in, the position of the child. I know my parents are still together, but I know even if they did have an argument when I was younger and my mom said something negative about my dad, it would upset me. I didn't like it. It was like, but wait a minute. No, you love him. I don't want to hear that. I want to tell me it makes you uncomfortable. And so I can only imagine when your parents aren't together to hear negative things or to see them, fighting. And it's hard.
It's one of those things where you really have to be intentional of like what you want. And, for me, it's like, it's a selfish thing to put yourself first. When you've taken the responsibility of doing the right thing for somebody that you made the decision one way or another to bring into the world.
Yeah.
Take accountability for the things you've done one way or another. You're responsible for the situation you are in, and you need to man or woman up to make it okay.
Yeah. And sometimes that does mean doing things you don't want to do. Maybe you don't feel, or things you don't feel like. You don't feel like being friendly at the baseball game to your ex, but you're going to be, to keep things calm and smooth. You might feel like doing something nasty, but you don't do it because
you're not going to let your ego.
No. And the thing is though, once you start, acting in that positive way, you start to go, actually, that feels so much better. Actually, sometimes doing the thing you don't feel like doing, you end up feeling way better afterwards.
Well, it's that ripple effect, right? Like you talk about de-escalation, right? Somebody has to go first and say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to take the bait. I'm not going to continue to have a dynamic where we speak to each other, do this, act in these different ways. I'm going to start to try to unwind it, to create a peaceful space so that you can have the best environment for your family possible.
Yeah. I think there is power there in kind of being the first one to draw your weapons down.
Yeah.
It usually, I found that too. And, even in certain friendships, it can be really small things, but just by being the first one that says, it comes down to taking responsibility, kind of, Mike, like what you said, one way or another, this is the situation you're in. And generally in relationships, I'll always be the first one to say, look, I take full ownership of all of this, and I take responsibility for all of it. And here's what I want to create moving forward.
Yes.
And if someone's on board with that, awesome. But, I've kind of put my weapons down. I've said, here I am, and I'm willing to, not only willing, I want to, make this work. I think an important thing we do need to touch on is some people that won't happen. It's kind of sad because I see people in this cycle, unfortunately, that drama is such a big part of their life, and arguing, or maybe it's something that they just grew up with, and it's really hard for them to let go of. And so no matter what, even if someone draws their weapons down, then they're still just angry. And that's just, I feel bad for people like that. When I see someone like that, I go, it must be really, really challenging. I think we cross paths with people like this on a consistent basis. You just angry people. And the thing is, hurt people. And anytime someone comes across as really like rude to me, and this kind of is even outside, co-parenting dynamic or anything, but when someone's really just out of the blue, unnecessarily unkind, instead of, being upset with them, that's the reaction for most people, I go, man, I feel really like whatever happened in their life, whatever hurt them in some way to make them this way, I just sending love to them. Like, I feel bad. Like, that must be such a challenging way to live life, is to feel like the world's after you and just to be angry all the time.
Exactly. And, we're all human. So we've had those moments where what that feeling feels like, but to be operating like that on a, pretty consistent basis. And the thing is when you are, as a parent, your children pick up on that, and you're teaching them that's how you.
I'm surprised I actually haven't said it yet. It's my favorite parenting quote that I remember I read just before Holden was born. And it's Jim Henson, who's the creator of the Muppets. He says, children don't remember what you tried to teach them. They remember who you are. I can certainly attest to that growing up, I was much more tuned into who my parents were than just the things that they were trying to teach me or tell me or say. We have to, I think as parents, it's so important. I think about that on a daily basis. Am I not just saying certain things or trying to teach Holden certain things, but am I living in integrity? And that's why, to come full circle to the house builds, to making the decision to separate from his mom, all these things I needed to do because they're examples. Holden is watching that. Every little action he's watching, and he remembers who I am, not the things that I'm trying to teach him.
Oh, absolutely.
I like that.
I love that. What a great way to bring it all home, bring it together. It's so true. And you've done that so magnificently well, while also being super honest about the challenges. We appreciate that.
Well, we really appreciate you being available to chat with us today and talk to us a little bit about what you're doing, what your dynamic is. I know Summer and I, when we were down spending some time with you, we did observe the relationship that you have. And we were like, man, these guys seem like they're really connected. They have a good connection. We should really talk to them about that. We should learn a little bit more about how your family dynamic is set up and how you operate and how you choose to create the environment that you have. Mm-hmm. Because it's a choice.
Yeah.
It's not something you're like, I just fell into this. You said, I want this. I'm going to make this. I'm going to create this and make this my reality, which is impressive, man. I like it.
It is. It really is. And especially to, have done it so young. And I know you're always continuing to learn, that's how it goes. I'm going to put links to the Greatness Foundation and how to get involved in that, because especially for anyone, there were some people that had gone that were recently, divorced, a parent with no children, just, kind of in that period of life.
And there's lots of kids.
And then there were kids. I think there was a lot of kids on this trip. And I know that there's different trips where there's, might be less kids, more kids, but I will say that wherever you're at in your blended family situation, whether recently divorced, single parent, just dating someone new, there was a family there actually that had just gotten engaged right afterwards that we actually roomed with downstairs. It was just awesome to see, all of the kids get together, all of the kids bond, the families bond, and it's just a tremendous experience for you as an individual. And
yeah, we're fans.
We're super fans. We're fans of all that you do.
No, I'm so grateful. And I do want to share, I've learned a lot from you two as well. I'm excited for when I do get back into kind of a, romantic partnership with someone. The amount of fun that you two have together is something that I really admire. I loved watching you, certainly as a family, but also kind of just as a couple, how much you laugh together, how much you play together. And that's something that's, my theme for this year is simplify. And my theme for next year, I already know it, is going to be just fun. Yeah. And so it's a lesson that I'm taking from watching you two and how you parent and everything. I just want to say thank you for the amount of fun and love that you bring into, a romantic relationship as well as the family dynamic.
Guess what? If your next year is fun, sounds like we're going to be hanging out next year.
Awesome. Yeah. We're going to be out on the boat a lot.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Everything Always.
Thank you, Mike, so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. Our goal is to bring you all kinds of value that will help you navigate these challenging waters of blending a family.
Reach out to us if there's something specific you want to hear.
And don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast.
And if you really like it, share with someone you love.
Ooh, and be bold enough to share it with someone you don't.